Hey everybody, today Rahdo rounds up the month of November 2019, and it was a very, very busy month for me and my wife Jen. Of course, the holidays are here, and so that means the in-laws are here, and I have spent I don't know how much time helping them learn how to use their brand new fancy Roku device that they've got for streaming, and that's gobbled up a lot of time. But not only that, we just got back, what was it, a week ago? 2 weeks ago, I don't remember now. Time has lost all meaning from BGG.con down in Dallas, Texas. My wife and I had a fantastic time. One of the best board game conventions in the world, as far as I'm concerned, and I've been to a bunch of them. And while I was there, I got to play 9 new games. And unfortunately, I did not get to play those with Jen. I played them with lovely, wonderful strangers for the most part, and some folks that I knew. And so, since I haven't gotten them to the table with my wife, and therefore I don't know how she feels about them, I'm not going to rank those 9. I'm going to list those 9 first and just give you a little idea of what they're all about. And maybe at some point in the future, I'll be able to get review copies and do proper roundups, run-throughs, rundowns, or whatever it might be. But after I do those 9, then we will start the actual countdown with the 18 new games that both of us played this month. Right. Okay. Is that straight? Hopefully, Jen will keep the in-laws occupied for the next hour or so while we do this. Let's get to it. So, those 9 games, boom, there they are. 9 of them in alphabetical order. What did I play? Cooper's Island, which I think is going to be one of the big new hotnesses of the year. It was certainly one of the most highly requested games from my last month's voting, and I should be filming it this month, but my review copy hasn't shown up. Fingers crossed it'll be here any day, and I'll be able to film it in December. But what is it? It is now my nominee for crazy heaviest game I played of the year. So I think it's the 3rd time I've made this nomination. First with Trismegistus, then with Legacies, and now Cooper Island is the heaviest. And it's a very, very sharp game, all about exploring everybody has their own private peninsula on this island, Cooper's Island, that they are trying to explore and colonize and exploit the resources to be able to score lots of points. And the interesting thing about the exploration, which is to say tiling of these peninsulas, is there's not much of a peninsula. Often you are building up instead of outward as you do all your tile laying, and it creates a fiendishly challenging puzzle. I liked it quite a bit, but I worry that Jen won't like it so much because you work incredibly hard in this game to achieve very meager results. Like the amount of brain power I have to put in just to get a couple of coins to put together so I can complete this objective is it'd be like half of a game under normal circumstances. So I worry that Jen might be a bit frustrated by the fact that you have to work so hard to make such little progress. It's a very low scoring game, but it's a very sharply designed game. And like I said, hopefully I'll be able to get it to the table with her in December and let you know how it goes. But anyway, that was Cooper Island. Then we've got Copenhagen Dice. I did a video for Copenhagen back earlier February, January, some point when it was on Kickstarter, and both Jen and I were super impressed by the base game, which is to say it's a Tetris-style polyomino tile-laying game where we're putting up colorful facades for buildings in Copenhagen. The roll and write, I called it Copenhagen Dice. It's actually Copenhagen Roll and Write, is basically the same game. We are stacking up polyomino pieces to score points by representing the facades of our, Copenhagen houses. But now we don't do it through a draft, which is the original game. Instead, we do roll and write, where if you're the active player, you roll a bunch of dice, you pick them for yourself to indicate what you're going to do, and then the remaining dice can be used by everybody else. So everybody's acting all the time. It was very, very sharp. And everybody I talked to that had played both seems to like the roll and write better. I think I like the original game better because that roll and write can throw in a super healthy dollop of swingy luck. And it's fine because it's a 15-minute game. But strictly speaking, I think I like the more strategic, plannable landscape that the base game. But I had a great time playing this. I played it a lot because every time I would finish a game, there were other people walking by. Hey, can we play? And so I just kept rolling into game after game after game of Copenhagen Roll and Write. Then there is Fire, which is Fire with an exclamation point. Very important and hard to find on Board Game Geek if you're doing a search. But anyway, this is the latest. It's really a solo game, although you can play it as a 2-player co-op with a couple of little rules tweaks. But really, it's a solo game from Freedom and Freeze, who is very famous for the very popular solo game Friday. And, right. It's good. It is basically a Space Invaders style or Galaga style simulation where there are perpetually more and more and more, wave after wave after wave of bad guys as you play through session after session. Because every time you win the game, some cards come out of the deck and other cards get added in. It's sharp. I enjoyed it. I actually played through the entire campaign pretty much in one sitting. And although, to be fair, I kind of cheated because when I lost, I said, what the heck, let's just say I won so I can move on to the next one and see what the next level difficulty is. So I didn't come anywhere close to winning. And it was certainly a very challenging solo puzzle. It is a very puzzly, math-intensive, simple math, but math-intensive game, all about trying to play the right value cards to be able to take out the right value aliens as fast as possible. I definitely had a good time with it. And I don't think it lives up to Friday, which is really, it's kind of one of the most well-loved solo card games out there. But it was still very good, and and if you're an old arcader like me, the theme was actually very much appreciated. So that is the latest from Friedman Freeze Fire. Then there was Miyabi. Now this one I liked a lot, and I bet Jen will like it a lot too. It is from Michael Kiesling, one half of the Kramer and Kiesling fantastic design duo, and this feels a lot like one of Kiesling's other games, Sansuchi. And that is a tile laying game where we're trying to build up a grid of tiles. And paying attention to the rows and columns so we can score points, building them up in such a way that they will score points on their row values and their column values. But the very interesting thing about this game is that, like Cooper's Island, not only are you laying your tiles out, but you're also building up. And what's interesting is this game comes with, I forget, like a half a dozen different modules you could turn on to, because the base game is really simple, lightweight, easy, fun-going tile laying game that you can play with just about anybody. But you can add on, and you can mix and match all these different modules. What we did, because we all only got to play it once, is we just turned on all the modules right from the get-go, and it was brain-burny. It was a wonderful burn, incredibly cleverly puzzly, all the different ways you could score points, but there's no way you could achieve it, all of them, so you really had to focus on different things and build outwards and upwards. And the trickiest thing is every time you lay a tile down in a given round, you can no longer put tiles in that column, if I recall correctly. So, over a given round, as the tiles you can draft are starting to dry up, and the places you can place them are starting to dry up, it just gets tougher and trickier as you've got all these different ways to score. Excellent game. I really look forward to getting a review copy of this. I know Jen will love it. Miyabi. Then there was Nova Luna, which is the design duo of Uwe Rosenberg and Korn van Musel. I think, I'm sorry if I get your name wrong, Korn or Korne. I'm sorry. But anyway, these two designers working together. Of course, probably most people know who Uwe Rosenberg is. You do if you're watching my show anyway. And Uwe, as I understand it, was really impressed by Korne's earlier design Habitats, which is a wonderful tiling game, one of my favorite tiling games of all time. And so Uwe worked with Cornet to bring the tile laying of Habitats and combine it with the drafting of his own patchwork. That whole notion of, you can take any of the next 3 tiles and then move forward and all of that. So, this is basically Patchwork meets Habitats, and that's a very good combination. This is a very sharp, fun, abstract tile laying game. In fact, this is another one, like Copenhagen, that I played a bunch of times, because every time I'd finish it, there were other people who just wanted to sit down and play a game with me, and I had it, and it was easy to teach, and we just got up and running, and it worked really well. That said, as much as I enjoyed it, it is nowhere near as rich and deep as Habitats. It takes a lot of the special scoring rules out and just kind of simplifies and streamlines it down into kind of like an Azul level of complexity. I mean, this could be an Azul killer if the publisher had, put in like the really cool, wonderful, like ceramic tiles. Don't get me wrong, the production is still really nice, and it is a sharp game because Habitats, before it was a sharp game. But honestly, I think Jen and I would prefer to play Habitats because it is deeper and richer and not quite so abstract. We do like to have a little bit of theme. And so that was Nova Luna. Very sharp game. Then Porto. This was nice. This was the last game I played of the show, and we were racing against time to get it finished as they were about to kick us all out. But this is a very light gateway style game too, about the same level as a Ticket to Ride. In fact, it feels very Ticket to Ride-ish in the card draft, because there's a bunch of cards, and most turns you're just going to grab a card, take one blind if you don't like one of the ones that are out there, or take a couple from the board, 1, 2, or 3, depending on certain rules, and you're building up a hand over and over and over again, so that eventually you'll got the right set of cards in your hands to make a big turn and claim space on the board. Now, the space you're claiming on the board is building facades, much like Copenhagen Roll and Write, although there's a whole bunch of buildings, and we're trying to get them all painted. And the interesting thing is, when you decide to do that, instead of drafting cards, you play 2 cards. All cards have a number and a color. And so, when you play 2 cards, one of them you'll choose the number, and the other you'll choose the color. So you might say, a 2 on this, even though it's a red card, and a blue on this, even though it has a 1. And you're saying, I'm building 2 blues. And so that means you get to put 2 blue tiles. And basically, this is a race/area control game, as players are trying to get all these buildings covered up and be the one to put the crowning top piece of a building and score it. And as well, there's always these public objectives, and everybody has private objectives too that they're trying to do as well. This was sharp. I played it as a 4-player game, and we all agreed it was a blast, even though we were playing at full speed, because like I said, they were about to kick us out. Had a really fun time. Would love to give this a go with Jen. I think this might be another keeper for us, because it was because it's one of those, it's nice to have really light gateway-ish level games for, in-laws or whatnot to have around, but ones that we could still enjoy as more hardcore gamer geeks, because there is a surprising, hidden amount of depth in Porto. Then Ratville. This one really surprised me. It's what it is, it's a very thematic take on the Institute of Magical Arts, which is a game I did a run through for years ago. It's the basic notion that every round we are going to each roll some dice and then assign characters to those dice. Or if you want to think another way, assign those dice to different characters we have access to, but we do it in secret. So we roll our dice. I can see the dice you've got. You can see the dice I've got. And then I start playing cards to these dice and in the case of Ratville, it's a post-apocalypse. Everybody lives in the sewers underground, and there's monsters coming trying to destroy our settlements. And so, if I rolled a 6, do I apply my warrior to protect the village, or do I apply my scientist, my technician, who can build really cool stuff for me? Who do I give the 1 to? Some characters don't really do well with 1s, other characters do well with 1s. But we assign all these characters in secret. Then we reveal as we go through did anybody apply their religious leader? Did anybody apply their mechanic? Did anybody apply their scientist? Did anybody apply their warrior? And we reveal, and sometimes on some of those reveals, it can get really tense, because whoever comes in with the higher, more powerful character for any of these stages gets control over that stage. There's multiple people attacking. Do you want the really big, tough, scary thing to attack you, or your opponent's settlement? Your opponent's settlement. So you want to bid high on that. So it's kind of like a whole bunch of simultaneous bidding going on based on the dice we've got, and it's sharp. I won't say it's as good as Institute of Magical Arts, which is still just amazing, but it is very, very good, and it does have the added benefit of being playable with more than 2. So, and the art is gorgeous, it was fun, it was fast, tons of replayability with all the different cool gadgets you can make. I was really surprised positively by Ratville. Then we've got Soviet Kitchen. Now, this is a fun little novelty game, because we are all Soviet World War II era chefs trying to cook for all the troops on the front line, but there's nothing for us to cook with, so we are just scraping together whatever we can. Rotten meat, boot leather, rusty nails, whatever it takes, and just throwing it into the pot, stirring it up, and hopefully achieving the cooperative goals of whatever type of food we're supposed to try and make in a given round. But here's the thing. Each one of the cards has a QR code, and you have to download an app for this. Because to be able to mix the right ingredients together to make whatever we're supposed to make, it's actually a color matching game. We can see, okay, we need to make some cabbage, but it's supposed to be kind of an off purple. Well, I've got a red card I could play, but it's a really light card. Does anybody around the table have dark cards? I'm going to play a light red card. And so nobody can reveal exactly what they've got in their hand until they play. They put the card, hover card over your phone. The phone takes a picture of it or uses the QR reader and mix and matches all the colors automatically. So you don't know exactly what you're going to make. You can just take your best guess based on the imperfect information you have from all the players. And it was sharp. It's silly, it's funny, it's fast, and I did like it. Now, the game comes with like a kind of like this little story-driven campaign, I guess, that you play through and unlock more and more and more functions and special ability cards. Like one of them I did play with was a grenade. You could throw a grenade into the pot, which means the next card that's going to get played gets blown up. And so if there's somebody on your team who's like, I got no good cards to play that'll help us with this particular dish, and I say, okay, let me throw a grenade in and then put it on top of the live grenade. So there's fun, silly, atmospheric stuff like that too. I mean, it may sound like it's a really grim setting, but it's played for laughs. And I had a good time. I was just worried that it was maybe a little bit too simple. It's practically a party game, which is generally not what I tend to go for. But I did have a good time playing. Was Soviet Kitchen. And then the last one of the games that I didn't play with Jen, so I haven't ranked them, but it was by far the best game I played. And this is including some prototypes I played that I can't talk about and all that. But of the 9 games, the new games I played, Walking in Provence is phenomenal. Oh my gosh, this is such a great game. It's basically the sequel to last year's Walking in Brano, which I liked quite a bit as well, although it's a very different style of game. It's just like the theme of, going to a beautiful picturesque place and having a character who walks around. This game is like Honshu or Hanging Gardens, the style of game where you've got cards and you kind of stack them on top of each other, partially covering each other cards to make this like little grid of icons. Valdoran Gardens was another one that does this. And I know Jen always loves this, but this game goes so far and beyond all the other games that have ever tried to do this style of gameplay because you're trying to build up the lush and lovely tulip fields or flower fields of Provence. And as you're doing it, you've got a little character that represents you and one that represents your photography drone. Very cutting edge game theme implementation here. And as you're building up your little field of flowers and whatnot and trying to match the right cards and sometimes tucking cards under or laying cards over the top or expanding your area, you're always paying attention to there are a bunch of objectives that everybody's racing to be the first to finish because you want to get you're laying out your cards so that you will get the windmill next to the soda shop or whatever. And if you can lay your cards out so you can complete that objective, and you can show that, if I put myself, because I'm a photographer, in this spot, this photographer can see all of the objects he needs to see, and you can tell this because the game comes with these cool, transparent little grids that you lay on top of your cards to show this is what the picture would be, whether it's a 360 picture from your drone or a directed picture from you. And it's insanely puzzly. Absolutely. I mean, it was probably the heaviest game I played at the show in a really, really good way. My only worry is I could imagine for Jen, it would be way, way, way too analysis paralysis prone because there is so much to consider every single round, but it is so good. I really hope I can get a review copy of this to show this to you. Actually, the publishers were supposed to send me one leading up to Essen, but it never showed up. I'm going to have to contact them again because Walking in Provence, I'm just going to say it right now, was my game of the show. Although, again, that was not in order, but Walking in Provence was absolutely amazeballs. Loved it to pieces. But those are all good games. But we're done with that, folks. Those are the games I played with other nice people. Some friends, some new friends, and some old friends. But now, what did I play with Jen? You know what? I'll tell you right after this because I'm so thirsty. I'll be right back. Whew, that hits the spot. Okay, so top 18 games of the month played with Jen. Counting down from our least favorite to our most favorite. Are you ready, spaghetti? Then, let's start with number 18, Pact. Now, this is the latest designer from Bernd Eisenstein, who was the designer of one of my top 10 games of all time, Peloponnese. In fact, I believe all of his games start with the letter P. And this is a very sharp game where players are, I was going to say warring tribes of goblins, but not really. We're all kind of temporarily allied tribes of goblins. And we're trying to achieve particular goblin goals and score points doing it. But here's the thing. The game has two parts. A majority of our time, we are drafting cards and playing them to our own little goblin village so we can get the right combinations of warriors and carpenters and various and sundry types of goblins to be able to achieve these goals that are publicly on display. Everybody can see, everybody's racing to complete them. But here is the thing. every turn, you also have the opportunity to complete one of the goals. And I can do that using only my own goblins, just the goblins of my tribe, which means I'll get a nice big bonus on top of it. Or I can form a pact with you, the player sitting to my right. Or I can form a pact with you, the player sitting to my left. And what that means is, you have no choice in this, by the way. I can combine my goblins with your goblins. And all together, we will collaboratively complete the goal. We will both get the in-game rewards, the victory points. We'll split the victory points of the reward, but because I was the leader on the project, I will get a nice big fat bonus on top. And here's where the devious nature of this game comes in. What you always are trying to do is fix it so that, oh, I see what you've got over there. Oh, you've got several warriors. I don't have any, but there's this objective over here that needs warriors and one carpenter. I think I'll do a pact with you. I will use my one warrior, which exhausts him. He's out of the game. And I'll use my carpenter, and I'll use all of your warriors. And so you just lost half of your tribe. I just lost one of mine. And we both get the points. But unfortunately, I really, screwed you over for all intents and purposes. And that can be very painful. Now, here's the thing. The core gameplay is great, and if you are looking for trying to outwit your opponents and always, get the leg up on them, and kind of hurt them while pushing yourself forward, this is a sharp game. I was really excited going into this game, though, because I like the idea of temporarily alliances and whatnot. And if there had just been one little change, I think this would have been a keeper for me and Jen. The thing that really bugs us, because, you're constantly getting new cards and losing them as you complete objectives. And hey, if we both complete an objective together, and you took some of my guys, at least I get points. The thing is, the fact that as a player you can add insult to injury. Not only did I take a bunch of your guys, but I'm the one who gets the bonus. If the rule had been changed, I think this would have been a keeper for me and Jen. If the rule had been, hey, when players work together, whoever contributed the most goblins gets the bonus, then I would be more incentivized to just take occasional little goblins of yours and not steal half of your village, because I still want to do the majority of the work myself so I can get the bonus, because I don't want to give you the bonus. But I do still need sometimes that one little extra bit that you've got over there so I can complete the job and get the bonus. That would have made the game perfect for us, because I should say the art is amazing. This is the best art from any game from Iron Games. I mean, they're not necessarily known for having really sharp looking games. This game is gorgeous. And the gameplay is really sharp, and it's fun, and it's fast. It's just that it's so cutthroat, and it didn't need to be. Burn, if you're seeing this, please consider a more friendly, Care Bear friendly version of it, where yes, I'll just use a couple of yours because I still wanted to produce the majority. Or, you know what, sometimes, hey, I just want to get this thing done. I'll use the majority for you. You get the bonus so you don't feel so, again, injured on top of insulted, the insult to injury thing. It's a great game, so don't be misled by the fact I'm making it my number 18, the bottom of my list for the month. I really liked it, and with that little change, I think it could be something really special. My number 18, Pact. Then we go to number 17, Mythical Island, which is a very sharp little game that feels kind of like a family gateway weight version of Tashkalar, which is an incredibly brilliant, puzzly little, it's wizard combat game for all intents and purposes. This has a lot of the same core mechanisms. There is a common grid. There's a whole bunch of stuff there, and we are constantly trying to manipulate all the tiles in this grid to have certain patterns that will match objective cards that we are trying to complete. Very much like Tashkalar. There's an extra wrinkle in that even if you got all the tiles in the right order and orientation with each other to be able to complete this particular objective, which represents you kind of summoning an ancient creature of, I think it's Icelandic lore, or was it Greenland? It's either set in Greenland or Iceland, I forget. But anyway, summoning these ancient creatures to score points. Again, very much like Tashkalar, but even if you get the stuff in the right order, you still have to get your little character moved over to be amongst those tiles. And that's a nice little extra wrinkle on top of it. And yet, in spite of that, this is a significantly lighter, more tactical game. Because constantly things are shifting. It's over very, very quickly. And we thought it was fun, but we were thinking, well, we would just rather play Tashkalar because it is a deeper, richer, heavier game. But I could see this working as a nice lightweight game. Where is it? I got it right here. And if you have, I have to look it up. Is it Iceland or Greenland? I should have looked this up. No, Icelandic. Yeah, this was developed by Icelandic gamers. I wouldn't be surprised if you visit Iceland. This is probably at tourist shops because the love that went into this, the art is amazing, and there's a whole separate booklet that talks about the mythical history of all these deities and creatures and whatnot. So it's definitely a love lever. It's a sharp little game, and if you don't mind a game where you're constantly just potentially indirectly, non-meaningly messing up your opponent's plans to arrange things for yourself and getting your plans messed up all the time as you just race to try and score the points, it's a sharp little game. But it's just so much lighter than Tash Kalar. It comes in at number 17, Mythical Island. Then we move on to number 16, Era, Medieval Age. Now, this is the newest game from Matt Leacock, designed superstar Mr. Pandemic and also Mr. Roll Through the Ages. And this is basically a continuation of the design work he had done on Roll Through the Ages, Bronze Age, and then Iron Age, I think was the sequel. Although, this is no longer a roll and write. Like those earlier games, this is a roll and build because we're going to roll, re-roll, and re-roll dice, Yahtzee style, until everybody has a final hand, and that tells you what you can do in a given round. And what you're trying to do first and foremost, is gather resources to be able to build up your own little fiefdom, your own little castle and farmland and villages and all kinds of stuff. And all the pieces of this game are lovely little plastic miniatures. And so, as you play through the game, surely one of the best things about the experience is just how wonderful and satisfying it is to build up this little three-dimensional kingdom in front of you. You feel a stronger sense of, creativity, really, because this is the thing. I'm just not writing stuff down on a piece of paper and keeping track of stats and whatnot. It's very, very nice. And, we really enjoyed it because the core gameplay of Roll Through the Ages, it is so great there. It continues to be great here. And in fact, this kind of evolves that because now, this is a game where as you build more and more stuff, you get to the point where you are rolling tons of dice and doing dice manipulation and all kinds of stuff. So there's a lot to like here, and I'll be honest, we didn't even mind that much. There's a little element of take that where occasionally players can choose, depending on how they roll, they could steal from other players or even destroy other players' buildings. The latter is pretty rare, and players can take steps to ensure that'll never happen. The stealing is something that can happen more often, but the beautiful thing about it is if I've gotten the upper hand in military, so this round I get to steal from you, you can choose to give me what I demand. You can give me the lumber or the food or whatever I'm trying to take from you, or you can say, I give you nothing, in which case you just lose some points. So I didn't mind to take that. What I did mind is I did not feel the player scaling was at its best with 2, because this game really needs at least 3 players for the metagame of players running military campaigns against each other as a 2-player game that is a major part of the game, but it all fell completely flat. And it really needed more players. And I think there's a simple solution because the game comes with solo rules that has a solo player that rolls every round. If that solo player were introduced to the 2-player game officially, I think this would be a great 2-player game. It would be a keeper, and it would have been much higher on the list. But as it is, I'm rating this at number 16 based on the rules, and I think the 2-player scaling could have used a little work for Era Medieval Age. Let me move on to number 15, The Taverns of Tiefenthal, which is the latest game from Wolfgang Warsch, who is the hottest new Euro designer ever since he had his big breakout year with Ganz schön clever and Quacks of Quedlinburg and The Mind. 3 games back-to-back that were all huge critical and sales successes. Well, he is back now with his next big box game, which is a mishmash of a bunch of stuff. It's got deck building. It's got dice drafting. It's got dice worker placement. It's got tableau upgrades. It's got everything. And of all of his games, I would probably draw the closest parallel to Ganz schön clever because at various points in the game, you will trigger very cool big combo strings of all kinds of actions. You spend a lot of time building up and then boom, you have a big explosion of stuff you get to do. And it's very sharp. I think more people would draw parallels to Quacks of Quedlinburg because it feels like it's a push your luck game. Because this is a deck builder where you don't just get your hand of 5 cards every turn. You keep drawing more and more cards every turn. And you draw cards, which represent all the workers of your tavern and also the customers of your tavern. You draw cards until all your tables are full. And then that represents, so you might, on a given turn, might only draw 3 cards because you only have 3 tables at the beginning of the game. Or you might end up drawing 6 or 7 cards if you get all your employees before the customers clog up all the tables. That's a very sharp central mechanism. And once you got all these cards laid out, then we're going to have a card draft or a dice draft where everybody rolls dice and we take turns grabbing dice so that we can activate all these different cards we've put into play. And that's a really sharp mechanism too. Every individual element of this game works really well. The reason it doesn't rate higher for us is because I'm not saying it's not balanced. I am relatively confident that Wolfgang did the math and it is fairly balanced. But the combination of luck of the draw, because some rounds you'll just get a really lucky hand of cards that you'll be able to do really amazing things. And in other rounds, you'll get bubkiss and you'll be very frustrated while all your players go, oh my gosh, this is going to be really great. Now, like any deck builder, if this was a bad round, it probably means the next round is going to be good, but there's only 8 rounds in the game. And but the problem is, maybe even if the next round is really good, because that's the nature of a deck builder. Sometimes you get a bad hand, but that means you'll get a better hand later because all your good stuff clumped up. Fair enough. But add on top of that the extra complexity of the dice draft, because you on a turn where you finally got that good draw of cards and you're going to have a really hopping active tavern tonight, that might be the round where no matter how hard you try, you cannot draft the dice you need to activate all those cards. So there's a 1-2 punch every round of random unpredictability, and for us, I think it compounded a little bit too much. Again, I'm not saying it's not well considered and balanced out. It feels like it works well. I can intellectualize that it's balanced and well because Wolfgang is clearly a talented and smart designer working with smart developers. I'm confident that those swings of luck even out over the course of the entire game. But still, the number of times we were frustrated, like, oh, I can't believe this is it. Oh, I finally got the cards and now I don't have the dice. Or, oh my gosh, these are the dice I needed last round, but those cards are long gone. There's just a little bit too much of that for our personal taste. And so while we liked it, we didn't quite love it. That said, it's a quick game. Only 8 rounds. You're going to zip through it, so that's not too terribly problematic. If the game were to get an expansion, because like any deck builder, you will get to the point where, okay, I've seen everything I need to see of these cards. I need more cards to put into this simulation. If the game gets an expansion and that expansion introduces more stuff to mitigate the luck, there's some, but you have to make pretty significant investments in your bar to be able to get those upgrades that will help you mitigate the luck of the draw and the luck of the roll. And I would like to see some of those luck mitigations come a little bit cheaper so you just have them more on hand. Because then the worst thing is, all right, this time I got so screwed by the dice and the cards, I'm going to invest everything in luck mitigation. And then in this game, the dice and the cards are kind and I didn't need those investments. So I just want to see a little bit more of that luck kind of evened out, which I'm confident an expansion will come out for this game, because I think Jen and I are in the minority. It seems like most people like this game a lot. But for us right now, Taverns of Tiefenthal sits at number 15 of the month. Okay, then move on to number 14, which is a Kickstarter prototype that I covered while it was, doing fundraising. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, no. This is a Kickstarter prototype for a game that was supposed to launch in November, but has been delayed until January. So should I actually take it off this list? Oh, no, what the heck. I mean, we played it. It's just you won't see the video of this until January, I think. For my number 14, Almanac, The Dragon Road. Now, this is the latest worker placement game from Steve Alms, who is Mr. Tiny Epic, although he's done lots of other games right now. He's definitely branched beyond the Tiny Epic moniker that's so easy to label him. And this is a very, very sharp game because it takes the storybook idea that was made so popular by the works of Jerry Hawthorne, like Mice and Mystics and Stuffed Fables. But also, I can't think of your name. You're right here. Red Raven Games and Ryan Lockett with Near and Far. The idea that this game comes with a book, and every time you turn to a new page, one side of the book is a map that represents all the board you're going to play on, and then the other side is all the special rules for this particular map. We've seen this in adventure games, but Scott and publisher Colossal have brought this idea to a Euro worker placement game. And this is an amazing combination of ideas because over the course of a game of Almanac, the Dragon Road, I think you end up seeing 5 different boards because you play for a round on a given board, and then we're like, hey, depending on how that worked out, we will travel to this page or this page. Every one of these pages, it represents a unique little worker placement mini game. The worker placement games are all unique. I just said that, didn't I? So you might start out, you might have just played, a worker placement that was kind of straightforward like Agricola, but then you turn to a new page and suddenly you're playing a Goetia-style river worker placement. And then you might turn to a page where all of a sudden you're playing coordinate matching Targi-style worker placement game. And that's awesome that in just a given session, an hour or less as a 2-player game, you are going to play like 4 or 5 unique worker placement games as you go from page to page to page, as you travel the Dragon Road. And that is awesome. We like this one a lot. The presentation is great. The buy low, sell high merchant life is fun. My only complaint about the game is some of the boards you end up going to have a very, very high luck quotient on some of. So sometimes, depending on how you travel through the game, you'll get to boards where, this one's a bit less strategic, and this is a bit more roll dice and see if your plans work out. And I wish those weren't there, especially because one of them is all but guaranteed to be one that you're going to play most games. And so, personally, I think the game has enough cool, fun, dynamic, exciting moments that it doesn't need dice to spice it up more, but it does have it. It's a not insignificant amount, and so that basically is what kind of knocks it down a little bit for us. I would love to see the dice-free version of Almanac the Dragon Road, because then it probably would have made my top 10 of the month. But even still, coming in at number 14 isn't bad for Almanac Dragon Road. Then, number 13, Tales of Glory. Okay. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, the reason I was saying it was a Kickstarter game is because it is a paid preview, so take my opinions about that with a grain of salt, as you always should with my paid previews, because I was paid to tell you about them. But anyway, that's still how I rank it right now, number 14. Then, number 13, Tales of Glory. Okay, this is a cooperative dice-chucking game from the designers of Elysium, which is one of the greatest card games of all time. Dunstan and Gilbert, because of Elysium, every time they work together, I am interested. And I was definitely interested in this time because they don't normally do cooperative games. And this looks like a very, very sharp, fun, fantasy fast game where on my turn, I'm going to roll my dice. I have to deploy at least one of the dice to one of the areas of the board to fight all the different problems the kingdom is facing. And then I roll the remainder and hope I get what I need because we are both contributing our dice in varying levels to these 4 different trouble spots around the board. But not only dealing with those, but also there are monsters popping up and stacking up all the time that are just waiting to strike. And, that can really set you back and make you lose all the dice all the work you put into completing these things. It's a sharp, fun, fast game. The cooperative nature is very nice because on my turn, depending on what I roll, that's going to in large part determine what I need to do. But I still need to remember, what is it that you're going to do? Are all your dice tied up? Do I need to finish something, even if it's not the most important thing, just so you can get some of your dice back? Because otherwise you're going to have a really terrible turn. That level of interaction between players is really nicely implemented, and we enjoyed it. Because, hey, it is my number 13. It didn't rank higher only because even with, There's some different complexity adding stuff you can do to the game. But it was, I think, a little bit too gateway-ish for me and Jen, for my wife and I. And we would have liked... we were playing at were we playing at the maximum difficulty level? I don't remember. We just remember thinking, yeah, this is a fun little breezy cooperative experience. And, the dice rolling is really nice and sharp. And, it's cool to have a Yahtzee-esque cooperative dice game for a change. Because normally, they follow the King of Tokyo model and just all about players trying to destroy each other. There's a lot to recommend here. But for me and Jen, it was just a little bit too lightweight. We would like to see something a little bit heavier, more long-term strategy, less short-term tactics. But still, definitely enjoyed number 13, Roll for Adventure. Then, I'm sorry. Oh, not number 13. That was... Oh, dear. Oh, shoot. Right. Okay, folks. I just told you about number 12, Roll for Adventure. I completely skipped number 13. You can check the show notes, by the way, in case this gets a little bit confusing, but let's rewind. Number 14 was Almanac the Dragon Road. Number 12 was Roll for Adventure. Number 13 was Tales of Glory. Okay, let's talk about my number 13. Sorry about that. That's what I get for filming in one take. Anyway, Tales of Glory is another fantasy game. And it's a tile drafting game where there's a bunch of tiles that represent locations that our adventurer can travel on a little maze that we're each making for ourselves. And we want to try to grab these tiles, jigsaw puzzle them together to make the highest scoring land that represents the tale of our adventure. All the places we traveled to, the monsters we fought, the quests we completed, stuff like that. It comes together nicely. The snapping all the tiles together reminded me a lot of check. That's the Russian word. What was the English word? Because I filmed it a long time ago. Oh, that is going to drive me nuts. And of course, it doesn't help for me to be filming live. No. This is exciting for you guys to watch, isn't it? And there are way too many games on these shelves for me to find it just looking around. Whatever the name of the game is, I put it on screen right there because my brain won't work. I should just pause and look it up. I'm going to pause and look it up. Viceroy. I grabbed my water, I was taking a sip, and I immediately remembered like 3 seconds later. Brain. Anyway, it reminds me a lot of the kind of pyramid puzzling together of Viceroy, because as you grab these tiles, you want to match the right color edges to the other color edges, and that kind of combines and restricts you as you build up a bigger and bigger adventure space. And that's really nice. It works really well. And the way we draft the tiles is interesting because in a 2-player game, there's 6. A row of 3 cheap ones and 3 expensive ones. And they get cheaper over time, as you might imagine. And everybody has a hand of cards numbered 1 through 6, I think. Yeah, because that indicates, this turn, everybody reveals at the same time, I want tile number 3, or I want tile number 2, or tile number 4. And, there's a tiebreaker if both players try to get the same one and all that. So that is probably, I think most people would find that superior to the Viceroy drafting method when it boils right down to it, because that had this kind of weird blind bidding auction thing that was not very popular. So the drafting works. The tiling works really well. Our problem with the game was, well, one, we'd rather play Viceroy because Viceroy is a much crunchier, tougher, heavier game to play, following some of the same core elements. But the other thing is, the player scaling, there are 6 cards out there, and what we found was, I really want card number 3. Okay, I'll reveal 3, and boom, you revealed it too. And, and the tiebreaker meant you ended up getting it instead of me. Okay, that's fine. I'll just go ahead and take one of the other ones. Because I can take any of the other ones at that point. And that means I've still got a choice of 5 more. And so there was never really any tension. Well, I was never really worried that I wasn't going to be able to get something good this round. Maybe I didn't get my first choice, but my second choice is pretty good too. I really felt like there should have only been 3 tiles to choose from. 1 of them cheap and 2 of them expensive. Something like that. So oh my gosh, if I don't get what I want, can I even afford to get what I need? What my backup is? That was really the thing that kept us from getting more engaged. It was just very breezy. Very easy going, very relaxing, but that's not what we play games for. We want games that really push us. And so the draft, I don't know, because it's interesting. Maybe we would have enjoyed it more because as a 3-player game, you still have access to the 6. Then I might not get my first or my second choice. But still, I like the core idea. I just think it need to be tightened a little bit more to make a bit more attention to our number, don't get this wrong, number 13, Tales of Glory. Then we move on to number 12, which I've already mentioned, Roll for Adventure. Then we move on to number 11. Sorry for the confusion, folks. Number 11 is another Kickstarter game that I covered when it was, I think actually the Kickstarter's probably still live at the moment. But anyway, like I said, take it with a grain of salt. I was paid to cover this, so you should consider that when I say how we liked it. But we liked my number 11, Legacies, a lot. And first of all, let me get this out of the way. Everybody asks, is this a legacy game? No, it is not a legacy game. It's a game all about building a legacy because this game takes place over 3 generations. No, 6 generations, 300 years. Starting in the 1800s, as I'm a magnate trying to build a financial empire, and I will at some point bequeath that empire to my heir. And then that heir will come into power, and that will be the next generation, and they'll have to find another successor. So this tells an epic story. And to be fair, the game length is epic. Jen and I, we found, okay, this is a 2.5, 3 hour game for 2 players. Yikes. I guess if we got good at it, it might get down to maybe an hour and a half, but I don't know, this is a long game, which is appropriate because it is an epic 300-year growth of, a Rockefeller-esque style story that, come from humble beginnings to, ruling the future kind of thing. And there is so much to recommend in this game. It is so cool. Your turns are spent playing cards from your hand, and each one of your cards, if I recall correctly, has 5 or 6 different unique things you can do with it. So that means if you've got a hand of 4 or 5 cards, you've got 20 or 30 or 40 different things you could choose from. But every time you play a card, you're not just disabling the action, but like several other things you could have done. So I love multi-use cards. It's one of my favorite things, and this is probably the multi-use card game I've ever seen because it is such a big part of the proceedings. There is so much planning that goes into that because I'll play this card and then this card and then this card, but I need this third card to do the thing. I need that to be the second card. As you try to puzzle out how best to play all these cards. But that's just the beginning. Another insanely cool thing about Legacies is the intertwinedness of players, because we can basically make investments in each other, and we're encouraged to do so because that's how we can get very powerful heirlooms or artifacts at a discount. But we can also create rivalries with other players, because if I am the entrepreneur, I'm kind of a little sketchy, I am probably not very well looked at by the military. And so if there's a military player in the game, I've already got a built-in relationship that means I get certain advantages compared to that other player and certain disadvantages. And this complicated web of entanglements between players is wonderful to navigate, especially because as a 2-player game, when you think, it's not going to be that great, there's only one other player, there is a third automa player, which you also use for the solo game, that's super duper simple, doesn't do anything complex, just basically consumes resources and becomes somebody you can ally with or be an enemy with. And it all works great. I love another thing about this game that's so fantastic. When you set up the game, you can choose to be an above board version of your character, which gives you a very special, powerful, unique ability, or you can play underhanded, which means you play the other side of your board and you've got a really sneaky, cutthroaty way to get ahead that hurts all the other players around the table. I love that, for players to have the freedom to play how they want instead of being prescribed. Nope, this is a game where you're cutthroat, or this is a game where you're Care Bear. Legacy is a game where cutthroats and Care Bears can live and play together. I think that's amazing. I like everything about this game. I was super duper impressed by it. Our only real issue is, like I said right up front, it is epic. And it's probably a little bit too long and heavy for our taste, we found. It's just kind of scraping that upper edge of Lasarda. The difference between Vinos or Gallerus versus Lisboa. This is on the Lisboa side of crazy heavy. And we wouldn't mind the crazy heavy if it weren't also crazy long. Super long, super heavy isn't a good fit for us. So as brilliant as the gameplay is, it comes in at number 11, Legacies. Then, number 10, Tungaru, another Kickstarter game. So once again, grain of salt. But this is a very cool game from the Maltzes, a father-son design team, Stefan and Louis Maltz. They are really flying under the radar. This is a design team that more people should pay attention to because they've got a lot of really great games out there. Probably their most popular one is Rococo, although they co-designed that with Stefan Kramer. Yes. But anyway, like I said, sharp designers. This is their latest game and maybe their most ambitious. It's a game that mixes a lot of different elements, kind of like Taverns of Tiefenthal I mentioned earlier. You've got bingo style dice rolling where one player rolls their dice and everybody else copies to have the same dice in a given round. So everybody has the same resources every round that they get to use. But then you've also got secret roll selection that gives you special powers. You've also got pick up and deliver, and you've got dice worker placement. There's a whole bunch of things that are mixed up into this crazy soup of gameplay mechanisms, and they come together very nicely. This is a fast game, unlike Legacies before it, where, you are just zipping along as fast as you can, moving from one island to another to use your dice, because if I've got the right dice, but I'm on the wrong side of the board to use them, I got to find a way to get over over there this round because I don't know what dice I'm going to have next round. But the actual theme of the game is probably what I like most about it. This is a game about immigration, about how the best way for our little Polynesian tribes and societies to get forward is to welcome new people into our tribe because they bring new ideas, new skills that help us excel and exceed. And so this is a game where players are competing to grab immigrants because they are the most valuable resource in the game, much like real life. Immigrants are an incredibly valuable resource for a country. But anyway, sorry, I'm not going to get political here, but for me, it was just nice to see a game that recognizes that, rather than pushing people away, the greatest strength we all have is working together. And even though this is a competitive game, it was a fun one, very, very sharp. We liked it quite a bit. I think our only real issue was, I'm trying to remember, why isn't it ranked higher? Oh, because it does feature a fair amount of pick up and deliver, which is really one of Jen's and my least favorite gameplay mechanisms. It mitigates that to a certain extent because rather than me constantly having to move back and forth, I can just drop characters off an island. So I don't have to sail all the way to one side of the board, get the thing, and then come all the way back because I can just leave my agent here. So there are nice ways, which is why it's a rare thing. It's a pick up and deliver game that we really like. Hey, it made my top 10 of the month. So check it out. I think the Kickstarter is probably over, but it'll be coming, or maybe not. But again, it was a Kickstarter title. We very much enjoyed it. Nice presentation. Great art from Andrew Bosley. Number 10, Tungaru. Then we move on to number 9, Draftosaurus. This is a very simple little lightweight game. Probably slightly less heavy than Seven Wonders. And actually, I mentioned Seven Wonders because, like Seven Wonders, this is a drafting game where everybody has a hand of stuff. They're going to pick one for themselves and then hand the rest to their neighbor and keep on going round robin like that until everybody's used up all the stuff. But in this game, we're not drafting cards like Seven Wonders or Sushi Go or so many other games. We're drafting adorable little dinosaur meeples. At the beginning of every round, everybody draws into a bag, pulls out a handful, I think it's 6, dinosaurs and keeps them all secret. And every round, I'm going to pick one dinosaur to put in my little dinosaur park and then hand the rest to my neighbors. And also, every round, there is going to be a dice roll that restricts everybody except for the lead player into where they can put their dinosaur. So I might have the perfect dinosaur. I want to put this T-Rex over here because that's where I need to put him. But the dice gets rolled. I have to put them over on the other side of my map. What am I going to do? It's a sharp game. I like everything about this game. It's fun, it's fast, it's colorful, it's surprisingly thinky. It seems simple on the surface. I could teach my in-laws how to play it, but Jen and I really enjoyed it. There's some deep twists to it and all that. I have one complaint, and it has to do with that die. Because I love that. I love the fact that, I've drafted, but the dice won't let me do it. Here's the thing. One of my favorite tilers of all time, it was my number one SimCity game, I did a top 10 this month, is Subdivision. Subdivision has that same basic idea that, hey, you're drafting, this is the time you want to build that school, but the zoning die said you can't build there, you got to build over on the other side of the map. In Subdivision, if you don't like what the die says, you could say, screw that, I'm going to build where I want to build, and you have to spend some resources. And you have, it's the resources that you need for other stuff. Am I going to waste my precious resources / points to achieve this thing? This is desperately what Draftosaurus needs. If Draftosaurus had that idea that, the die isn't giving me what I want. If the die affected everybody, not just the following players, but all players, and everybody had the choice to jettison just victory points. Simple as that. Just take a negative victory point marker. Something like that to say, I'm going to ignore the die and do what I want. This game probably would have made my top 3. We enjoyed it that much because it's colorful, it's fast, it's charming, it's got a little bit of meat to it. And it's just so nice to see a Jurassic Park game that doesn't follow this ridiculous trope of, hey, you know what? I'm trying to make the greatest Jurassic Park in the world, and every round, a certain number of my park goers are going to get eaten. And yet, I'm going to continue, I'm going to stay in business. They all seem to follow this, and it drives me nuts. This is a game where, no, the dinosaurs are just taken care of. Nobody's getting eaten. It's just a fun, light, breezy time. That is my number 9. Although it could have been higher. Hopefully, they'll address this in an expansion, Draftosaurus. Then, number 8, Red Outpost, which is another Kickstarter game, folks. This is a worker placement game with a really unique theme. I like it a lot. Basically, in the 60s era space race between the US and the Soviets, yes, America got to the moon first, but it turns out the Soviets were never trying to get to the moon. They were trying to launch a long-distance rocket to colonize a faraway alien planet. And it turns out they did. But the world never heard about it because the rocket crashed, and it was assumed everybody died, so the Russians just hushed that up. Now, it turns out they did survive, and there's now, however many decades later, a thriving communist colony on this alien planet. And everybody is competing to be the head of the Politburo. And we're doing it through worker placement. Because this is a communist society, everybody shares in the wealth equally, and that means every player is using a communal group of workers to gather resources and turn those resources into points via various different little mechanisms. But the interesting thing is, every time I pick one of the workers, whether it's the fisherman or the farmer or the bureaucrat or whatever, and I send them to do whatever work I want them to do on my turn, that work either makes them happy or sad, depending on what the situation on the board is, what type of character they are, because all the different types of workers have different strengths and weaknesses. And if I make whether I make them happy or sad, there's a marker put on them that indicates that I have, as one of the managers, am responsible for their state of mind. The more time I use a given worker, the more of my markers go on there, and at the end of the day, there is a reckoning. If a worker is happy and you contributed the most to that worker's happiness, you get points. And if you contributed the most to a worker that is miserable, you lose points. And that is brilliant. It basically fuses worker placement, communal worker placement, with area control, because everybody wants to be considered the top manager of the super happy workers, and nobody wants to take responsibility for the miserable workers. And so there are ways you can kind of vie for control over dominance of the workers, but you're still actually trying to play the main game of going out and building the stuff to make the colony successful. This is a smart game. A lot of really cool ideas I hadn't seen before. A great theme, wonderful presentation, and it's not on Kickstarter yet. I think it's going to be going on in the next week or so. You'll see my run through then. And remember, it was a paid preview, so bear that in mind when I say how much Jen and I enjoyed it. But we really, really enjoyed Red Outpost, number 8. Then we move on to number 7. Another Kickstarter, and this one is Honeybuzz. This is the latest in, I don't know what's up with all the honeybee simulation games we've been having over the last few years, but this is the latest one. And I think it stands out from all the others because it is the heaviest one. These games normally tend to be very lightweight, fun little gateway-style games. Some of the ones I've played are actually the designer designed it to play with his daughter and stuff like that. But not this game. This game is surprisingly heavy, because you spend an equal amount of time trying to build your own honeycomb in the hive while triggering multiple combo chains of special powers to be able to go out and get the nectar to bring it back so that you can make honey, which is the central fuel that drives everything. There is a lot going on in this game. Every round is, again, simple rules, but crunchy gameplay. Really hit our sweet spot. Sorry, with the honey and all that. But I did have one problem with it, and I'm not quite sure. It's interesting. The original design for this game has, there's a field of flowers. All the flower tiles are face down. And as you go about your business recalling your workers, you get to peek at the flowers, and you're trying to remember, right, I'm building a honeycomb that is good for a particular type of flower. I got to find that flower in the field. And there's statistically likely places it'll be, places where it won't likely be. And every once in a while I get to peek. See, that's not the kind of flower I'm looking for, but I'll remember where this is. I'll put it back, and later on when I need it, I'll know where it is. Except I'm not going to remember where it is. This game has a huge memory quotient, and we hate that. We absolutely despised it here because this was already a heavy enough game that we did not need to have to memorize stuff. But what the developers have done is they came up with a variant where instead of memorizing things, all the fields are face up, and you have an extra worker who instead of just going out and peeking at stuff, you get to move this worker around, and depending on where he is, you get that tile. So if there's a tile you really need, well, you can just slowly work your way over there rather than peeking until you find what you need, and you can collect them. So this system works really well. In fact, I liked it quite a bit. If that were the only way the game were available, this game would still rate very highly for me. But having played the memory game, the seeking, trying to find things feels so wonderful and thematic, especially the push your luck, because if I see you seek, I know what you're looking for because I can see your honeycomb, and if you peek at something and then you put it back, I know I know what it's not, because if it was a certain type of thing, you would have taken it. So you can start deducing what's out there, but it still requires memory. So here's my complaint. This game, well, it would have rated much higher if the developers included a pad of paper that is basically a layout of the field, so you can take notes of what you've seen and what you've seen that other people have seen, so that you could start doing some basic deduction stuff. If the game came with that, it would have been knocked up a couple of notches. I have heard, people have told me, the developers are now considering that as a stretch goal. I don't know if that's the case or not. Fingers crossed, because like I said, currently Honeybuzz sits at number 7. And yeah, I think it probably would have moved up to number 4 if it had that, so that I could play the memory game without requiring the memory, and I could just play the deduction game, which is really cool. But that aside, Honeybuzz is still really sharp. Check it out. Although, again, remember, that was a paid preview right there. So, that was number 7. Number 6 is Expedition to Newdale. This is the sequel to designer Alexander Pfister's Oh My Goods, which was a wonderful little card engine building game where you have multi-use cards. The cards are basically they can be goods that I need to run an engine I've already built by feeding these cards into the engine to, convert goods into other goods, or they can be the building blocks of the engine themselves. If I can afford to pay to put them into play, I've got a bigger, more vibrant engine, or I can just discard these to run my existing engine. That was the core of Oh My Goods, and there was also some push your luck element too, because every round a certain number of cards would be available free to everybody, so you didn't have to burn your own cards to run your engine, and you had to commit before you knew what all the cards were. Neat, cool ideas in Oh My Goods. I've already covered it. I covered the first expansion. I didn't cover the second expansion, but I've got it. But anyway, I say all that because Expedition to Newdale is the latest. We had Oh My Goods, and then Revolt in Longsdale, and then Flight to something was the second. I can't remember the second expansion. But now Expedition to Newdale is basically the 4th chapter in a narrative story that's tying all of these games together. Now, I'm not saying this is like a really deep Pulitzer Prize winning story, but it is nice to have a narrative that strings everything together. The other thing is that while Expedition Newdale, it basically has the same kind of, or a different take, but largely the same type of push your luck engine building combination that Oh My Goods did. This is not a card game. This is definitely a board game, because as you build up your engine, you have to claim spots on the board that represents where your engine is. And there's a lot of gameplay that goes into getting access to all these locations on the board, being the first to get to locations, to get bonuses, all kinds of stuff. It really opens up the Oh My Goods, which was a fun little 20-minute very fast engine building game, and now makes it a full, big, proper board game, and it works wonderfully. We absolutely adore it. Love the fact that it comes with, 8 chapters that you play through in this storyline that we see characters going through, basically there's a lot of stuff. I don't want to spoil the story. I just love that there's a Euro goods conversion engine building game out there that has a story for me to spoil. And so I love seeing that. I want to see more of that from Alexander Pfister. We love Oh My Goods, and we very, very much enjoyed Expedition to Newdale as well. Then we move on to, that was number 6. Number 5 is, it's another Kickstarter, folks. It was a good month for Kickstarters. Number 5 is Ugly Sweaters. And I think this one is over, so you can't get it now, which is too bad, because this is the full title is Ugly Christmas Sweaters, because this is a game, it's a trick-taking game, and here's the thing that's brilliant. It's a trick-taking game that works great for 2. That almost never happens. But it works here, and it works so brilliantly, because the tricks, we are all throwing cards in. Somebody's going to win that trick. And the trick represents pieces of the ugly Christmas sweater that you're trying to knit for all your relatives. But the thing is, you take these cards, the cards represent the torso, the left arm, or the right arm, and you try to basically, literally stitch them together as you win these tricks and put these cards together to make, literally, ugly Christmas sweaters. Although they don't look that bad. They're kind of nice looking, I think. But the complexity that goes into this, because you score these sweaters via a whole bunch of different objectives, and there's constantly, am I trying to shoot for this objective or this objective? If I get this piece and build this sweater, it'll work towards both objectives. But what are the chances? Is this the round do I push really, really hard to win this trick, or can I not possibly pull it off? It's really great trick taking, and the thing is, if you play it with the full rules, it does have a simplified kind of introductory variant, but if you play with the full rules, this is a surprisingly deep game. There is a lot of crunchy stuff that goes into making simple, ugly Christmas sweaters, and Jen and I loved this game. Well, it's my number 5, no surprise. It's great to see a trick-taking game that works great with 2. It's a great theme. It'll be nice to have a Christmas-themed game that I actually enjoy, and I could probably play any time of the year. It's number 5, Ugly Christmas Sweaters. Then we got I got to fix my list so I don't forget that when I add it to my show notes, because I got the name wrong. Yeah, we go on to number 4. I promise it's my last Kickstarter of the month, but once again, final time. Grain of salt, because I was paid to play this game and do a preview. But that aside, what I will tell you is Jen and I were super duper blown away by my number 4, Goetia. And this is a worker placement game with some very, very, very cool ideas. The number one being that, I send my workers out to the board, which is comprised of a bunch of cards that, so the board is variable and is constantly changing and evolving over the course of the game. I send my worker out to a card, and if it's a space that doesn't really give me a lot of stuff, I'll be able to grab that worker back at the end of the round. But if it's a good space that really pays off big, then what will happen is that worker will get locked in place until all the linked worker placement spaces to that space get occupied by me or somebody else. So I might start a round with 5 workers, and I go out there and I get a whole bunch of stuff done. But at the end of the round, some of my workers might get stuck and stay out there. And so next round, I've only got 3 workers or even 2 workers. And am I going to be able to use them to unstick my other workers? But here's the thing. Other players are incentivized to jump in and help me complete those things because, hey, sometimes they just want the weaker spaces, or sometimes they are spaces that everybody who is involved with completing it gets a bonus. And maybe, I jumped in first and they jump in later and end up snagging the better bonus out of it. And I don't care if I get the worst bonus because I just need my worker back because they're all tied up in all these spaces. And if all that weren't enough, the worker placement board is a grid. And if you try to do some of the most powerful actions, which are on the outskirts of the grid, when you place your workers there, you have to pay resources to do these outer actions. The cost of the resources is all the workers along that row or column in the grid. But you can, or I'm sorry, it's all the worker spaces. So if you have first sent some workers out into the grid, so they have gobbled up all these spaces, that makes the outskirts actions much cheaper. And so I might do some stuff, and then somebody else leverages my workers to do a cheaper action they normally would have had to do. There is a surprising amount of depth and constantly dynamic shifting world. Really, really cool stuff. Jen and I were surprised how much we liked it. And I have to admit, it was a bit of a gamble for me to even try this game, because I'm bearing the lead here. This is a game. All I've done is I've said, hey, we have to gather resources to complete objectives and stuff like that. The resources and objectives we're gathering and completing have to do with demon worship. Biblical era, King Solomon demon worship. And it is a very darkly themed game, which is odd because it's a very bright, colorful presentation, but some of the art is grim. I'm not going to say grotesque or violent or anything, but it's definitely a grim feeling. And as much as we wanted to enjoy just how amazing the worker placement is, it was always kind of niggling in the back of my mind, yeah, we're probably committing murder and doing all kinds of sins so that the demons will give us their favor so that we can summon them and get special demonic powers. And why is there this theme here? It was definitely not a theme for us. But in spite of that, the gameplay was so good, it comes in at my number 4, Goetia. If it had been a different theme, it might have been my number 1 of the month. The gameplay is that good. Now, sadly, the Kickstarter failed, but they're retooling. They're going to be back, I think, in early next year, and fingers crossed it succeeds, because this is one of the most clever worker placement games I've played in years, quite frankly. And right now, it sits my number 4, Goetia. Then we got number 3. Okay. This is an expansion for Pursuit of Happiness called Experience, or Experiences, one or the other. I'll have to look. And we love Pursuit of Happiness. And now with Experiences, I think Pursuit of Happiness has finally eclipsed CV as our go-to preferred, hey, let's play a game where our goal is to live the best life possible and just be happy. That is such a wonderful theme. I would love to see more of that. More the game of life brought into modern Euro board games. CV, and there's a few of them out there, but CV and Pursuit of Happiness are the two big hitters. And Pursuit of Happiness, this is its second expansion, or its third expansion, I believe, and it's got some really cool stuff. Pursuit of Happiness is a worker placement game where the workers I place are the time I spend in my teen years, my young adult years, my middle-aged years, and my elder years before I eventually die. How happy do I die? That determines whether I win or lose. The experience expansion brings in two fundamentally new things. One is the ability to dream, which is to say, every round, over the course of the game, there's a whole bunch of cards, and you want to grab them because at the end of the round, the cards that weren't grabbed are gone. And if there's a card out there that I really want, but I can't afford it right now, I can dream about it. It's my perfect career. I can't do it right now, but I'll dream about that career, and that means if I do a dream action, I take that card and I put it in a dream queue, and that means I can do it in a later turn. So this really opens up the game because this game has always been about very tight. You better grab it now because it's going to disappear. Now you can bank stuff and finish it later. So from a gameplay perspective, this is a really wonderful addition, but even more so, it's a wonderful thematic addition. Because the interesting thing is, the longer, if you dream about it, but then you sit on it for a while, every round after round, you don't actually complete your dream, your desire for it builds. And that means when you eventually do complete that dream, you get even more points and rewards out of it. That's brilliant. It tells such a wonderful story. I dreamed my whole life of Veronica, of marrying her. And I'm in my old age and I'm about to die, but finally, my dream will come true and we will finally live happily ever after and have a last dance together. I shouldn't talk about that because when Jen and I played, it was actually in my... we both had a little bit of a cry because it was such a beautiful ending to the story because it was basically... Oh, man. Anyway, sorry. Pursuit of Happiness is fantastic. Experiences is fantastic. Oh, dreams are cool. Experiences are the other cool thing. They are a new way that you can spend resources to get points because you can have once-in-a-lifetime experiences like seeing the Great Wall of China or going to Oktoberfest or things like that. That was a very cool thing too, but the dreams are what really made it special. And if I had one complaint, it would be I wish that there were more experience. Almost all of the experiences you can do are travel themed, and I still like the idea of being able to live a life where, no, my life was not all about travel. But I had once in a lifetime moments in my life without traveling to the other side of the world. I just would like a slightly richer, more robust story I could tell, or more variety to the stories I could tell that aren't so travel focused, which is what almost all the experiences are. That was a tiny, minor complaint on what is otherwise an absolutely wonderful expansion to an amazingly wonderful game. My number 3 of the month, Pursuit of Happiness experience. Then, number 2 is Fantastic Factories. Oh my gosh, this is such a great engine building game. And I should say, I should get a drink of water. Hold on. That's a lot of talking. How long have I been going there? An hour, 61 minutes. Okay, let's get moving. Snappy. So, for number 2, Fantastic Factories. On the surface, doesn't really seem that special. It's pretty straightforward. You draft some cards, you spend cards to put other cards into play. You roll some dice every round. You use those dice to activate the cards you've put into play to gather resources and convert those resources into points. This could not be a more straightforward vanilla engine building game. But it is so perfect at that. This is just such a wonderful, smooth, elegant game. It purrs. It sings. It is incredibly fast, incredibly fun. Every round, we just draft a card, we add it to our hand, and then we start running our engine. And while at the beginning of the game, our engines are very simple and small, by the end of the game, you are pulling off amazing, super combo-tastic things where I'll use this to activate my robot that gives me an extra die, and the robot plus this other thing will run my recycling center that will convert all these crappy cards into the resources I need to run this other canning facility so that I can generate these points, and I've ended up pulling cards out, and it's like, boom! The thing is, everybody's doing this, and if there's one problem about the game, it doesn't bother me and Jen, but I did actually, it's interesting, I played a game of 4-player Fantastic Factories at BoardGame.con, so I played as a 2 and a 4-player game, and I played as a solo game, or great as a solo game. So, my only complaint about the game is, it is so much fun, and you feel so cool at the amazing combos you turn out that it is a shame that everybody does their engine building simultaneously. So I do all this cool, amazing stuff, and I look up and say, oh, I bet they're all doing, I want to hear what they're doing, and I want to tell everybody what I'm doing. But everybody's just kind of focused on their own thing. Now, that's going to be a problem for some players. There's very little, almost no interaction other than, well, as a 4-player or a 3 or 4-player game, sometimes you play cards that will allow you, oh, I get a resource and somebody else has to get resources as well. Lords of Waterdeep style. That's really nice because then there's interaction of everybody vying, hey, give it to me, give it to me. Remember, I'll do you a favor later, all that kind of stuff. Of course, that doesn't appear in a 2-player game. But wow, this is about as perfect as engine building gets. It's pure, it's sweet, it's just so fun and so satisfying and so fast. It's my number 2 of the month, Fantastic Factories, and yet there is a number 1, folks. It's a cooperative game. It's a city building game. It is Cities Skylines. This is my number 1 game of the month. I would say Jen would agree. And in fact, I'm sure this will probably make my top 10 of the year. This is so amazing because it is the rarest of things. A city building game that is cooperative where everybody is working together. It has a great solo mode too, although I find it to be much more fun with other players. And, it's not based on SimCity. It's based on another popular city building game called Cities Skylines, which I've not played. So I don't know how true it is to the Cities Skylines experience, but it really feels like SimCity to me. Trying to get my residences and my industry and my commercial and my special civics buildings and all that, and trying to keep a good balance, making sure people are happy, making sure crime is low, making sure economic jobs are available, the economy is strong and jobs are available, keeping the streets clean, dealing with events, disasters, everything you would expect from a SimCity, or I guess Cities Skylines is here, but it is so wonderful to work together. And what makes the cooperative so cool here is we each have a hand of cards. We always have at the beginning of our turns a hand of 5 cards, I believe. Could be wrong, but I think that's what it is. And on my turn, I got to play a card. And that card will let me expand some residential area or zone some commerce or build a special building that'll trigger special powers or whatever. And here's the thing. All the cards, almost all the cards, they'll give you a certain thing. They'll increase jobs or they'll bring more money into the city or whatever it is. But almost all of them have a bonus thing that they will also do if some other metric has already been achieved. Like if you have a fire department, then you'll get this bonus when you build this residential because the people who want to live in here are very fire conscious safety. So I don't want to play this card to only get the top benefit. I want to get both benefits. But you've got the fire department. So I can't play this until you play the fire department. But you don't want to play the fire department until I've played this other card. And so this game is a constantly evolving and negotiating puzzle of, you need to play this card before I can play this. I need to play this card. Or also, sometimes, oh, you've got the card. I need to play that because I've got the special power that will double the effect of that card. But it's in your hand. So this game is all about timing. Navigating, should I play this card? Does anybody might, oh no, wait, let me play this card first because I'll double the power of that card. Well, then what am I going to play this turn? Well, I guess I can play this other card, but I'd really rather wait for you to play that card before I play this card before you can play the other card. You know what I'll do instead? I'm not going to play any cards. I'll burn some of our money, and if we run out of money, we lose, so that I can put a card into the transfer pile. And that means on your turn, you could pick it up. So we can spend resources to collude and share resources with each other. If I'm at the wrong time and I can't play a card, I'll put it on hold, either so that you can grab it or so that I can play it later after the other thing is done. And this creates such a wonderful group puzzle. And it's so different than all the other co-op games out there because co-op games, by and large, follow the formula of Pandemic. There's a threat. We're moving around the world trying to collect things and fight hotspots and keep plates spinning. This game, it is all about economics. It's all about resource management. We are not characters in the world. We are just city planners trying to work together to solve all the problems. And if all that weren't enough, did I also mention they are crazy shaped polyomino pieces that we are trying to puzzle together to fit into district spaces. And as the city expands and we suddenly get more land to build into, but that brings more costs. It's fantastic. As a lifelong SimCity fan, well, not lifelong, I was born in '69, but I mean, I played the original SimCity, or actually, I played originally on my Super Nintendo to death, and then SimCity 2000 and all those, oh man, it is beautiful, and it is just so nice for a change to build a city with Jen instead of trying to build a city to beat Jen, my wife. And that's a big part. Although everything here works so wonderfully, why it is my number 1 game of the month and will be in my top 10 of the year, I'm absolutely confident. Cities Skylines, from the designer of Nations, which is in my top 10 games of all time, by the way. Rustin Hackinson, well done, sir. That's it, folks. top 18 games plus 9 more, and we are done, getting in at an hour and 18 minutes. Oh, I am parched. And I'm sure my in-laws will be back at any time, so I got to go back to teaching Nancy some of the finer points of her Roku remote. Might teach her how to use the asterisk next. But anyway, as always, thanks for watching, and apologies for the delay. We'll see you again at the end of the month for the rundown of December. Have a nice day, everybody. Talk to you later. So long. Bye-bye.